I was reborn, determined to cut Ethan Carter out of my life. When he applied to the National University of Defense Technology in Hunan, I actively cut off all ties. I switched my application to the University of Technology in Beijing. The goal was clear: to ensure we'd never meet again, living in completely different parts of the country. When Ethan came back home during the new year and tried to see me, I drove off for a trip overnight. I didn't answer his calls or reply to his texts. When he was transferred to the city where I worked, I immediately applied for a job relocation. I didn't even want to see him. In my past life, I loved him for 30 years and endured 30 years of his indifference. By my 40s, I was diagnosed with cancer. On my deathbed, Ethan was busy decorating his new home, and the two sons I had painstakingly raised were too preoccupied with their weddings to visit me. I died alone in a cold hospital room waiting for the end. Such a failed and tragic life. I will not live it again. After resubmitting my college applications, I finally felt a sense of relief. I wouldn't have to be entangled with Ethan anymore. No one knew I had been reborn. The early application deadline was noon tomorrow, but I was worried the system might crash, so I changed my application late at night. In my previous life, I spent my whole existence chasing Ethan, resenting him, and ultimately ruining myself. This time, I won't have anything to do with him. I want to live in completely separate worlds, never crossing paths. July 13th marks my 18th birthday. On that day, I will publicly tell him, "I won't marry you, you're free now." There are 15 days left. As I stepped out of the internet cafe, a text from Ethan appeared on my phone. "I'm out with friends and might be home late. Cover for me, thanks." I casually replied, "Sure." Ethan and I grew up together. Our fathers were comrades in arms and our mothers were best friends and colleagues. I lived at his house for 3 years, always calling his mom Aunt Linda. She treated me better than she did her own son. I secretly loved him, but he was in love with Ashley Morris. Initially, I planned to keep my feelings hidden forever and just be the little sister he always saw me as. But on the day of the college entrance exams, Ethan took me to a bar. While I was in the restroom, 2 men harassed me. If Ethan had come looking for me when I didn't return, I can't imagine what might have happened. Being assaulted was an unbearable humiliation. I almost took my own life. Aunt Linda blamed Ethan for not protecting me and forced him to agree to an engagement out of guilt. Ethan reluctantly agreed, promising to hold the engagement party once our college acceptance letters arrived. Ashley couldn't accept Ethan's engagement and caused a huge scene. Ethan kept finding excuses to comfort her. In our past life, Ethan truly loved Ashley. He was willing to sacrifice everything for her: his principles, his future, and even his conscience. The more I clung to him, the more I lost. The more I lost, the more unwilling I was to let go. I did everything I could to fight against them, hoping they would suffer as much as I did. In the end, Aunt Linda, who had once been like a mother to me, cut all ties. The 2 sons I had worked so hard to raise grew to despise me. I overheard them saying, "If Mom's life is so miserable, she might as well die early and let Dad and Ashley finally be together. It's been 30 years, they deserve it. This time I won't play the villain tearing them apart. I won't care about those 2 ungrateful sons either. I'll let them have each other and free myself." Changing my college application was the first step toward staying far away from Ethan. It was also the first step toward living for myself. In my previous life, to stay close to Ethan, I gave up my dream school and followed him to the defense university he admired so much. The strict military-style management was far harsher than I had imagined, leaving me physically and mentally exhausted. What hurt the most was watching Ethan and Ashley exchange flirtatious glances right under my nose. I was filled with rage but didn't dare confront them because I was the intruder. Later, Ashley was suddenly expelled. Ethan thought I was behind it and never treated me kindly again. After college graduation, Ethan delayed our wedding endlessly until he received Ashley's wedding invitation. Ashley Morris hastily married a rich, aimless second-generation heir to cut off any lingering feelings Ethan Carter had for her. Disheartened and numb, Ethan went through with our wedding like a lifeless shell. After the marriage, Ethan avoided me as much as possible. He spent years without coming home, and when I visited him at his military base, he preferred to cover a colleague's shift rather than return to his quarters to spend time with me. Aunt Linda frequently called asking if I was pregnant yet. She even sent me an entire set of intimate lingerie, desperate to win Ethan's approval and eager to give Aunt Linda the grandson she wanted. I shyly put on the lingerie and climbed into his bed in the duty room. Ethan, however, pointed at me in disgust and called me shameless. I couldn't take it anymore. That very night I packed up and left, determined to divorce him no matter what. Ethan returned home, apologized, and gently coaxed me into reconciling. He finally fulfilled the long-overdue consummation of our marriage 3 years late. That one night left me pregnant with twins. I foolishly thought that having children would make Ethan step up as a husband and father, but I eventually realized that the children could only tie me down, not him. The only person who could hold on to Ethan was Ashley. Even when Ashley's provocations caused me to go into labor prematurely, nearly costing me and the twins our lives, Ethan still defended her without hesitation. To make me forgive Ashley, he knelt in front of me and stabbed himself twice, claiming it was penance for her sins. At the time, I was still in the hospital and our 2 babies were in incubators. Ethan didn't ask about me or the children even once, let alone visit them. When I got home, a video from Ashley popped up on my phone. In the video, she and Ethan were dancing intimately, their movements charged and electrifying. Aunt Linda, who had just returned from her night shift, noticed me staring at the screen. Curious, she leaned over to see what I was watching. When she saw the video, she was furious. That boy, leaving his fiancée behind to dance with some outsider, I'll skin him alive. Aunt Linda slammed her palm on the table. And that Ashley. The nerve of her clinging to Ethan even though he's engaged. Tomorrow, I'm going straight to her parents to set things straight. Ashley's father worked as a security guard at our school, and her mother was a janitor. Aunt Linda, as the school's administrator, had always been considerate toward them. That was until she discovered that Ethan was secretly involved with Ashley. Aunt Linda valued social status and saw Ashley's background as unworthy. She wanted Ethan to marry me because of my family standing. My father was a major, my uncle a principal at a prestigious provincial high school, and my uncle-in-law held a director position. My connections could help Ethan build a bright future. To break them apart, Aunt Linda would nitpick and criticize Ashley's parents whenever she saw them, hoping they would take the hint and step back. But neither Ashley nor her parents were willing to let go of Ethan. They clung to him persistently. In my past life, Aunt Linda and I joined forces to try to drive Ashley away from Ethan, but we failed. By the time I was on my deathbed and Aunt Linda was too old and powerless, Ashley finally married Ethan and even won over my 2 sons. This time I won't interfere with them, but I also won't stop Aunt Linda from acting as the gatekeeper to the Carter family. If Ashley wants to become the daughter-in-law of the Carters, she'll have to get through Aunt Linda first. Aunt Linda had one method for punishing Ethan: a feather duster. A single stroke left a bloody welt and she never held back. After one such beating, I thought Ethan would blame me for tattling and avoid me. Instead, he came to apologize. "I'm sorry for making you misunderstand," he said. "Ashley and I were just dancing, nothing more happened. Don't worry. I know my place. I won't do anything inappropriate." He spoke sincerely. If I hadn't seen the kiss mark on his neck with my own eyes, I might have believed his nonsense. Ethan had always been a liar. As a child, he tricked me with little gifts, making me cry, laugh, and fuss over him. Yet I never thought he was a bad older brother because he spoiled me. After I gave birth, he lied, claiming he had cut ties with Ashley Morris. I believed him and brought our 2 sons to his military base to celebrate his birthday, only to find Ashley and her daughter in his dorm room, surrounded by women's belongings. Later, when I was gravely ill, I asked him to visit me in the hospital. He said he was injured and couldn't move, but in truth, he was busy preparing for his wedding with Ashley. In my past life, Ethan lied to me for decades. This time I won't believe a word he says. As long as I don't believe him, he can never deceive me. I smiled gently and said, "There's no need to explain. I have no right to interfere with your freedom. When Ashley sent me that video, your mom happened to be beside me." I didn't tattle. She just had bad luck. Flaunting your love like that often backfires. If Ashley hadn't deliberately tried to provoke me and assert her dominance, Aunt Linda wouldn't have humiliated her. Ethan gave a bitter smile. "How can you say you have no right to interfere? Once we get our acceptance letters, we're supposed to get engaged. Once we're engaged, I'll be yours entirely. I'll follow your orders, serve you wholeheartedly, and devote my life to you." "That won't happen," I replied calmly. "I won't get an acceptance letter from the National Defense University, and I certainly won't marry you. There's no need to force yourself or make hollow promises. Just you're for 14 more days." Ethan frowned. "What happens in 14 days?" It hit me. He didn't even remember my birthday. I pushed him out of my room. 14 days until you regain your freedom. I'll let you go. After submitting my college application, I had to prepare for the military medical exams under Aunt Linda's strict supervision. Ethan didn't sneak out to meet Ashley again. However, he spent his days glued to his phone, constantly on calls or video chats with her. Every time Aunt Linda caught him, she beat him with a feather duster, leaving red welts across his back. She even handed the duster to me, urging me to vent my anger as well. I couldn't be bothered to waste my time or energy, I said. Forget it. Ethan, mistaking my indifference for reluctance to hurt him, seemed moved. Don't worry, he said. Ashley and I are just talking about normal things between friends, nothing else. I know I'm engaged and won't cross any lines. An engagement means nothing, I thought to myself. Even a marriage certificate wouldn't stop him and Ashley from running off together. I gave him a vague hum in response and left it at that. Every day, between running laps, long jumps, sit-ups, and studying for the psychological tests, I was too exhausted to care about whom Ethan was flirting with. Ethan, on the other hand, was deeply worried that Ashley wouldn't pass the interview phase. He asked me if I had any connections to help her. If you wanted to help, of course there would be a way, I said flatly. But why would I inconvenience my family for someone I dislike? Don't you always advocate for fairness and justice? He retorted. Why would you refuse to make an exception for Ashley? Ethan was clearly displeased with my response, but he said nothing more after that. He stopped speaking to me entirely. His coldness didn't bother me. I had long since grown accustomed to his indifference. Aunt Linda assumed the silence between us was due to the pressure of the exams and didn't dwell on it. Instead, she focused on preparing delicious meals for us every day. The morning of the military medical exam, Ethan returned from the garden with a single rose. Aunt Linda chuckled. That boy is finally learning. He knows to bring you flowers now. I didn't have the heart to tell her that the one who loved roses was Ashley, that Rose wasn't for me. The moment we met, Ashley Morris slapped me across the face. You're despicable. Taking Ethan wasn't enough for you. You even got Aunt Linda to fire my parents. Ashley's parents had indeed been dismissed from their jobs. Aunt Linda's anger this time was real, but what did that have to do with me? Ashley didn't dare confront her future mother-in-law directly, so she came to vent her frustrations on me. Did she think I was weak and wouldn't fight back? Raising my hand, I prepared to return the slap, but Ethan stepped in to block me. They've lost their jobs and things are hard for their family. Please don't hold it against her, he said softly. If you're really upset, hit me instead. Hit me as many times as you want. I laughed bitterly. So because her family is struggling, it's okay for her to slap me? Am I just her punching bag? I turned to Ethan and asked, who are you to her that you feel you can apologize and take the hit on her behalf? It seemed that Ethan had forgotten one crucial fact. We weren't engaged. As my supposed fiancé, he should have been defending me. But even so, he didn't let go of Ashley's hand. If it weren't for what happened back then, he began hesitantly, we wouldn't even be engaged, and my mom wouldn't have targeted her parents. Ashley's already feeling terrible. Can't you just cut her some slack? In my previous life, when Ethan and I were at the National Defense University, he would always say similar things whenever I had a conflict with Ashley. He knew how much I hated being reminded of that incident, yet he brought it up repeatedly to guilt me into backing down to protect Ashley. He had no problem stabbing me in the heart over and over as if I couldn't feel pain. Now here he was doing it again, but this time I wouldn't yield. I met his gaze coldly and slowly pried his hand off mine. Ethan, worried I might escalate the situation and cause trouble for Ashley, pleaded with me in a low voice. Please, she didn't mean to hit you. She was just too upset. Taking a deep breath, I cut him off. Should I call the police then? Ethan froze. He knew that if I reported the incident, Ashley would lose any chance of passing her interview. After a moment of hesitation, he stepped aside without a word. I slapped Ashley, but in the final moment, Ethan couldn't bring himself to let her take the hit. He pushed her aside and offered his own face instead. The slap landed hard, leaving a vivid red mark across his cheek. Ashley cried out in shock. "Ethan, why would you let her do that? She doesn't deserve to hit you. I'll make her pay for this." Ethan stopped her, his eyes rended with emotion. "Is it enough now?" he asked me. The sight of their angry, aggrieved faces made it seem like I was the unreasonable one in this situation. "Whatever," I muttered to myself. "Just 12 more days and this will all be over. Endure it." Ethan was entirely focused on Ashley, worried that the stress from her parents' unemployment might affect her performance in the interview. He didn't even notice that I wasn't in the same exam hall as them. It wasn't until the physical fitness test that he finally realized. "Did you change your application?" he asked. I didn't want to talk to him, so I lazily nodded in response. Ethan seemed annoyed. "Why did you suddenly think you couldn't handle the full military discipline and decide to give up?" He pressed further. "What's your first choice school? If you tell me, maybe it'll cheer everyone up and save me some trouble." "Beijing University of Technology," I said casually. Ethan murmured instinctively, "So far away. Staying distant is probably the best way to avoid disrupting your happy little life together." I didn't respond and walked past him. As I stepped down the stairs, someone suddenly pushed me from behind. Though I managed to grab the handrail, my foot twisted awkwardly. The injury wasn't severe, but it would undoubtedly affect my physical test performance. Ashley sneered behind me. "You almost ruined my interview. Now it's your turn to fail the physical test." I glanced briefly at the surveillance camera above us and said nothing. The test was about to start, and I didn't have time to waste on Ashley. When the examiner learned about my twisted ankle, he moved my name to the end of the list and even arranged for someone to massage my foot. The first event was a 50-meter sprint. I finished in 15 seconds, disqualified. With only 4 events in total, I had to pass all the remaining 3 to qualify for the early admission track meant everything to me. Otherwise, I'd have to compete in the general pool. The examiner glanced at me with concern as I stood at the edge of the field. The standing long jump was next. My first attempt barely reached 4 meters. My legs trembled, heart pounding. By the third jump, I managed to hit the minimum requirement. Thankfully, I passed the rest of the tests. The 800-meter run, the sit-ups, all of it. As soon as I stepped out of the test site, I pulled out my phone and called the police. Ashley was arrested that same day. Ethan was frantic. When his attempts to negotiate with the authorities failed, he finally swallowed his pride and came to me. "May, can you forgive Ashley? She didn't mean to," he pleaded. I looked at him coldly. "Have you even seen the surveillance footage? If you had, you wouldn't be saying this." He knew, deep down, that Ashley had pushed me on purpose. But still, he made excuses for her. "She misunderstood you about a few things," he said softly. "I'll talk to her. I promise she won't hurt you again." Ashley had always believed that the incident at the bar had been a trap, something I'd set up to drive a wedge between her and Ethan. They never hesitated to bring it up in front of me, twisting that trauma into a weapon as if it were my fault. And now Ethan had the nerve to reopen that wound. "I reject your plea," I said coldly. "Your promises mean nothing. You can't control her, and you don't have the heart to punish her." Ethan's face flushed with humiliation, torn between Ashley's recklessness and my refusal to give him any leeway, and yet he still couldn't let her go. "Can't you?" "She committed a crime," I cut him off sharply. "She should face the consequences. She deserves her punishment, and I will not forgive her." In my past life, I had been too weak, too forgiving. That weakness had allowed Ashley to trample me again and again, but not this time. This time, I was determined to teach her a lesson she would never forget. As I turned to, "Leave!" Ethan grabbed my arm. His voice dropped to a pleading whisper. "If I use the kindness I've shown you over the past 10 years to ask for this one favor, would you give me this chance?" His words made my chest tighten. For 10 years, Ethan had truly been good to me. He treated me like a real little sister, protecting me, indulging me, even taking the blame for my mistakes. He fought for me, defended me, and after my mother passed away, He became the only light in my life. Without him, I would have crumbled long ago. It was because of his kindness that I'd never been able to let him go. In my past life, I had always hoped he would someday turn back to me. I had no parents to rely on, no siblings to support me, only him. But I finally understood. Once a man's heart belongs to someone else, his childhood companion becomes nothing more than a memory. In this life, there would be no connection between us anymore. It was time to repay the kindness he had once shown me. "Fine," I said firmly. "But remember what you just said. From now on, we owe each other nothing." Ethan's expression faltered. Panic flashed across his face, as if he wanted to say something more. But I shook off his hand and closed the door behind me. Moments later, my phone buzzed with a text. "Ethan, May, I'm sorry. I've made you sad again." He knew exactly what he was doing. Yet he still chose to protect Ashley. Apologies meant nothing, not when his actions never changed. He was simply following his heart, and that was fine. I didn't love him anymore. Whatever pain remained, I could endure it. Just 6 more days. When Ashley was released, she showed no remorse. In fact, she became even more aggressive. "You're nothing but a parasite living under someone else's roof," she sneered. "Pretending to be so noble, calling the police. Do you really think that works? Ethan's father is a military officer with strong connections. You're shameless clinging to him like this. Even if you hold on to him for now, how long do you think it'll last?" She smirked, eyes gleaming with spite. "When we enter the defense university, we'll barely come home once a year. Do you think you'll even see him? Aunt Linda can't protect you forever. Ethan doesn't even like you. He only pities you. You really think he'll get engaged to you? Let alone marry you? Just give up." I was busy picking a dress for my coming-of-age ceremony and had no interest in her nonsense. But seeing her arrogance, I decided to give her a little reminder. "Did Ethan never tell you?" I asked lightly. "My father is also a major in the same rank as Ethan's father. My uncle's a school principal, and another uncle's a government director. If I wanted to ruin you, not even Ethan could save you." Ashley's face twisted in disbelief. "You think Ethan used his connections to get you out?" I continued. "He didn't. He begged me to forgive you. Swore you'd never try anything again. Only then did I agree. If I hadn't, you wouldn't just be banned from the National Defense University. You wouldn't even pass a political review for any school." "Do you understand?" Ashley snorted. "You expect me to believe that? You're bluffing. In 3 years of high school, who's ever seen your dad? Has your uncle ever bent any rules for you? And a director? That's hardly impressive. You're just a pathetic freeloader clinging to the Carter family for food and shelter." Those 4 words on the pathetic freeloader cut deep. Even though my family background was strong, I didn't have a real home. My father was a workaholic, always away. The last time I'd seen him was at my mother's funeral 3 years ago. My uncles were buried in their own lives and families. After my mother's death in a car accident, I'd moved into the Carter's home. Aunt Linda treated me like her own daughter, and for a while, I truly saw her as a second mother. But after being reborn, I remembered how things had changed, how Aunt Linda's warmth had turned cold after my falling out with Ethan. I could no longer feel the same affection for her. Every day under their roof now felt like quiet torture. Just 3 more days.
The day before my birthday, my aunt called early in the morning.
"There's something I've been thinking about for a long time," she began slowly. "I think you should know. We found new evidence about the incident, the one with those men who assaulted you. In my past life, I could never bear to hear about that event. Even the word assault would send me into a spiral. But this time I stayed calm." "What is it?" I asked, curious. Her voice trembled slightly. "The 2 men who attacked you. It seems they were guided by someone. What they and the bar staff described." My aunt hesitated over the phone, her voice tight. "It could have been Linda Spring." I froze. "They were drunk," she continued, "and someone led them to where you were. Based on the descriptions, it might have been Linda, but none of the cameras caught her face. There's no proof she was at the bar, and no evidence she ordered them to do anything. That's why I didn't tell you earlier. Just keep this to yourself." When the call ended, I sat there in stunned silence. So the people who had ruined my life weren't just those 2 men. It was Aunt Linda. She'd never liked Ashley and had always eyed my family background. That's why she orchestrated such a vile plan, to force Ethan to get engaged to me. I was nothing more than a pawn, a tool to break Ethan and Ashley apart. A stepping stone for Ethan's future. No wonder she'd always encouraged me to fight for Ethan's affection, No wonder she'd grown cold and resentful every time I failed to win his heart. To her, I was useless once I couldn't get Ethan to turn away from Ashley. She left me to struggle alone, raising 2 sons with no help, and when I finally retaliated against Ethan, she stabbed me in the back. From the very beginning, Aunt Linda had never truly cared for me, only for how she could use me. Moments later, she walked into my room carrying a large box, her face glowing with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "May, I've got a surprise for you," she said cheerfully. "Open it." I took the box, feigning excitement as I lifted the lid. "Wow," I breathed. "What a beautiful dress." "Thank you, Aunt Linda." She held it up against me, beaming. "It's perfect. Why don't you wear it on your engagement day with Ethan?" "Sure," I said sweetly. Then with a soft smile that masked the rage burning in my chest, I added, "I'll wear it when Ethan gets engaged to Ashley. I'll give her this dress so she can be your daughter-in-law. I'm sure it'll be memorable." "You ruined my life, Aunt Linda. Now I'll make sure you never have peace again." Linking my arm through hers, I said warmly, "I have a surprise for you tomorrow, too." My coming-of-age party was held at the city's most luxurious hotel. The guest list was small, just close family, friends from both sides, and the Carters. Aunt Linda was all smiles, chatting brightly with my relatives, her laughter ringing through the hall. Ethan, however, looked uneasy as he exchanged polite greetings with my uncle and cousins. A server approached me. "Miss Pan," he said, "there's a young lady outside, Ashley Morris. She says you invited her. Should I let her in?" At the mention of her name, Ethan visibly flinched, shooting me a sharp, accusing glance. Aunt Linda, on the other hand, smirked with approval, her eyes gleaming as if to say, "Good girl." My aunt, standing nearby, gave Ethan a cold look. "Is this the same Ashley who pushed you and nearly made you fail your physical test?" she asked mockingly. I smiled and nodded. "Invite her in," I told the server. Ethan tried to stop him, but the server had already turned away. Ashley entered moments later, wearing the same white dress she'd once worn while dancing with Ethan. Her hair was styled in an intricate braid, her makeup flawless. She looked radiant until her eyes met mine. Surrounded by family and friends, I stood beneath the glittering chandelier, calm and composed. The sparkle in her gaze dimmed immediately. She looked like Cinderella who had wandered into the prince's ball, beautiful but hopelessly out of place. Ethan rushed to her side, shielding her from the curious eyes around us. The way he hovered protectively over her, it used to be me he treated that way. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked, voice taut with worry. "May invited me," Ashley said softly, her voice trembling. "She told me you were going to propose to her today." Her eyes filled with tears.
Ethan, please don't propose to her.
I really like you. I know I can't compare to May, but I like you so much." Her voice grew smaller with every word, her confidence shrinking as she looked between us. She'd just turned 18, still a child in many ways, and now, standing here, she saw the gap between us more clearly than ever. If she were Ethan, she would have chosen me too. Clutching his hand tightly, she looked at him as though he were her last breath of air. Aunt Linda, growing impatient with the scene, snapped, "May, why did you invite her here?" Her words pulled me back to the moment. I gestured to a server who brought down a large box from upstairs. Taking it, I handed it to Ashley. "This," I said calmly, "is the engagement dress Aunt Linda prepared for her future daughter-in-law. Try it on, see if it fits." Ashley's face lit up with joy. Turning to Aunt Linda, she exclaimed, "Auntie, are you agreeing to let me and Ethan get engaged? And you're even giving me a dress?" Ethan's panic was immediate. I could see it in his eyes, the regret, the confusion, the guilt. He had spent weeks convincing himself to give up Ashley, to go through with an engagement to me out of duty. And now, here I was, undoing it all in front of everyone. Now he finally understood what I meant when I said I would let him go. His unease deepened with every second, but before he could speak, I smiled.
Do you like the surprise?
I asked lightly. "I've been planning this for half a month. Ethan, for once, you don't have to say sorry or thank me. Because I didn't do this out of kindness." Aunt Linda's smile vanished. Realizing what was happening, she snatched the dress from Ashley's hands. "In your dreams," she hissed. "You think you're worthy of this dress? This is for May. I gave it to her so she could wear it on her engagement day." "Aunt Linda," I said calmly, "didn't you tell me yesterday that this dress was a gift for me? How did Ashley misunderstand your intentions?" She's the one misunderstanding, Aunt Linda snapped, glaring daggers at Ashley. I smiled faintly. I accepted the dress, but I never promised to wear it. Ethan looked lost, torn between us, but I was no longer shaken. I prepared a surprise for him too, I continued. Taking the dress from Aunt Linda's hands, I offered it back to Ashley. Ethan loves Ashley. It's only natural that he should be engaged to her. Turning to Aunt Linda, I added softly, "You shouldn't tear them apart. True love can overcome any obstacle. You should believe in their ability to make each other better." Then I slipped off the 4-leaf clover bracelet Ethan had given me for my birthday and handed it to Ashley. "This is the bracelet Ethan bought. Try it on, see if it fits." Both Ethan and Aunt Linda were frozen in shock. Ethan reached out for me, but I stepped aside easily, gently pushing the dazed Ashley toward the fitting room. "Go try on the dress," I said. "If it doesn't fit, Aunt Linda can have it altered for you." Ashley's face broke into a radiant smile. She thanked me over and over before following the server out. But Aunt Linda wasn't finished. "Wait! That dress isn't yours. You can't touch it," she snapped. My aunt, the one who had called me earlier, stepped forward and pulled Aunt Linda aside. "Let it go," she whispered. "Forcing things won't bring happiness. That girl doesn't seem so bad. She might actually turn out fine." Aunt Linda huffed angrily. "She's just a security guard's daughter. What makes her think she's good enough for my son? If you like her so much, why don't you let her marry yours?" My aunt only shrugged with a smile. "She doesn't like my son. Besides, he already has a girlfriend. She's a prosecutor." That only fueled Aunt Linda's fury. She pinched Ethan's arm hard, dragged him forward, and shoved him toward me. "Ethan," she snapped, "tell me clearly that you love her." "Not Ashley." "Go on, say it." But how could he? How could Ethan look Ashley in the eye and say something so empty? He couldn't bear to hurt her, not even for a moment. And yet deep down, he knew exactly how much he had already hurt me, all because he had chosen her. What right did he have to say he liked me now, after everything we'd been through, after our friendship was already ruined? Even if he said it, I wouldn't believe him. Ethan looked at me with a complex expression, a mixture of regret and frustration. Just as he was about to speak, Ashley came running back into the room, twirling in the new dress.
"Ethan, this dress fits me perfectly."
"Do I look good?" she asked, her face glowing with happiness. Ethan nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on me. Ashley, clearly dissatisfied with his half-hearted response, lightly tapped his chest. "You didn't even look at me!" "Do you not want to get engaged to me?" Ethan didn't reply. His eyes stayed locked on me, more focused than I had seen them in years. Whenever Ashley was around, his gaze always drifted toward her. But now, as I prepared to leave, it seemed like he suddenly didn't want to let me go. At the mention of engagement, Aunt Linda lost her composure entirely. If my aunt hadn't held her back, she might have torn Ashley apart right there. Feeling cornered, Aunt Linda resorted to a low blow, bringing up the incident that had haunted me for years, right in front of everyone. "Let me remind you," she began loudly, her voice dripping with mock concern. "Ethan's just like a street lamp that failed to guide you. He took you to a bar but didn't protect you, leaving you traumatized. Are you all right now?" Everyone knew this was my sorest subject. In those first 3 days after it happened, it felt like I was suffocating every single moment. I was completely unhinged. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I spent every waking moment in chaos. Neither my uncles, aunts, nor anyone else could console me. Only Ethan had been able to calm me down and help me sleep peacefully. When Aunt Linda had first suggested that Ethan get engaged to me, no one objected. And when I finally crawled out of that darkness and decided not to go through with the engagement, no one objected to that either. But now Aunt Linda's words had the potential to drag me right back into that abyss. My uncle and my mom's brother both glared at her, their expressions dark and murderous. Ethan kept giving her pointed looks, silently begging her to stop. But Aunt Linda, oblivious to his signals, continued to trample on my pain. "From now on," she said smugly, "don't go to those chaotic places like bars. Young girls can easily get into trouble there." My uncle slammed his hand on the table in fury, but my aunt held him back. She turned to Aunt Linda with a sharp, cutting smile. "You were at the bar that night too, weren't you, Linda? Why were you wearing a mask in the middle of summer? Were you sick, or was there something you didn't want people to know? If you were there, why didn't you take her home right away?" Aunt Linda's face paled instantly. Realizing she'd been exposed, she finally shut her mouth. To ease the tension, my other aunt quickly changed the subject. "Has the admission list been released yet?" Did you apply to the National Defense University? I set my chopsticks down and replied calmly, No. I applied to Beijing University of Technology. The list just came out and I've been accepted. The room erupted in congratulations and praise. But Ashley, oblivious to the mood, sneered. You? A pampered princess becoming a police officer? Can you handle the hardships? The salary wouldn't even be enough to buy one of your dresses.
Ethan immediately reached over to cover her mouth, but she playfully kissed his palm instead.
It was the kind of intimate gesture that might seem sweet in private, but in front of a crowd, it was tasteless and vulgar. Ethan's face turned bright red and he didn't dare look up. I met Ashley's mocking gaze with composure. Actually, someone like me is best suited for a career in law enforcement. I can stand firm against pressure, remain uncorrupted by wealth, and dedicate myself fully to serving the people. Someone like you, on the other hand, would harm not only yourself, but others too. You'd be bribed with the smallest of benefits and crumble under the slightest threat. My uncle clapped enthusiastically. Well said. Our public security system needs people like you. On behalf of the provincial police department, I welcome you. My aunt chimed in teasingly, and on behalf of the prosecutor's office, I reluctantly welcome you as well. Ashley, still ignorant of the situation, sneered again. What gives you the right to speak for the provincial police department and the prosecutor's office? It's not like your family owns them. Ethan had completely given up on trying to control her by this point. The amused glances from everyone in the room made him wish he could disappear into the floor. Before the meal was even over, Ethan took Ashley and left. Her naivete might have been endearing in private, but when exposed in public, it was nothing but humiliating. Aunt Linda also left halfway through the dinner. After the meal, I didn't return to the Carter house. Instead, I stayed at a hotel. My aunt sent a server to the Carter house to pack my belongings. I spent 2 days at the hotel before returning to my own home. It had been 3 years since anyone had lived there. Other than the withered flowers on the balcony, everything was just as it had been when Mom was still alive. After tidying up a little, I put on one of Mom's old dresses and lay down on her favorite rocking chair, dreaming of being loved. My mother had been a beautiful and elegant woman who loved dressing up and having fun. She adored me and spoiled me endlessly. Whatever I wanted, she gave me. She used to say, "You've grown up without a father and you're such a sensitive girl. I have to give you all the love in the world." She always said that she had to give me all the love in the world so I could grow up healthy and happy. But I hadn't even grown up yet before she was gone. After receiving my acceptance letter, I took a picture of it and sent it to my dad. I wanted to visit him, but I wasn't sure if he'd have time for me. I waited for his reply, but instead, Ethan sent me a message to apologize. "May, I'm sorry. Whenever you and Ashley had conflicts, I always stood by her and ignored you. I don't like her, and I never thought about marrying her. I just pitied her and wanted to help her." I believed he was telling the truth. He liked Ashley, yes, but not enough to marry her. In our past life, part of his obsession with Ashley came from her being unattainable. The more he couldn't have her, the more he wanted her. But once she was within reach, he found her far less appealing. After much deliberation, I replied with one simple sentence. One day I'll meet someone who always stands by me, whether it's friendship or love. That's all I ever wanted, someone who would always be on my side. The day I left for school, Ethan offered to take me to the train station. I declined. "It wouldn't be good to make your girlfriend misunderstand," I said. He frowned slightly. "She's not my girlfriend. I already explained everything to her." I smiled faintly. She doesn't see it that way. Since accepting the engagement dress from Aunt Linda, Ashley had been acting like Ethan's fiancée. She even sent me a message warning me. Ashley had sent me a message warning me to stay away from her man. After I blocked her, she resorted to calling and texting me relentlessly. It got to the point where I even considered changing my phone number. Ethan said nothing as he took my luggage and walked ahead. I deliberately lagged behind, putting as much distance between us as possible. I didn't look at him or speak, ignoring him the way he had ignored me in our past life. He noticed my aloofness, turning around several times as if to say something, but each time he closed his mouth. He knew that some things could never go back to the way they were. Perhaps out of guilt or simple politeness, Ethan bought me a large bag of snacks at the station's convenience store. I picked out a simple pack of plain sunflower seeds. Surprised, he asked, "You don't like anything else? Don't all girls love snacks like these?" Ashley's name was practically on the tip of his tongue. He couldn't go 3 sentences without mentioning her. Yet he claimed he didn't like her. Who was he trying to fool? Me or himself? Not all girls like those snacks. Ashley does, I said evenly. You remember everything she likes, but you've forgotten that I've always loved plain sunflower seeds. Ethan suddenly covered his face with his hands and lowered his head, guilt flooding his expression. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I'm sorry." I smiled lightly, pulling my luggage toward the ticket gate. I didn't even say goodbye because I never wanted to see him again. I had chosen a sleeper train, allowing me to enjoy the scenery along the way. Across from me sat a girl who noticed I was holding a copy of the Civil Code. "Are you a freshman?" she asked. "Which school are you attending?" We soon discovered her name was Vivi, and she too had been admitted to Beijing University of Technology. What a coincidence. Our university had only admitted 2 girls from our province this year, and I had already run into the other one. Vivi was outgoing and friendly. Within 3 minutes of chatting, she was already calling me Big Sister and had added me on WeChat. We read through the Civil Code together, shared our dreams and aspirations, and even traded snacks. The more we talked, the more we clicked. I felt like I had met a kindred spirit, as though Vivi and I were destined to cross paths. It wasn't until I got off the train that I checked my phone. Ethan had sent me a message. "I'm sorry I've ignored you for the past 2 years. How can I make it up to you?" It wasn't 2 years, it was 30. And I didn't need him to make anything up to me. I deleted all of Ethan's contact information and changed my phone number. During winter break, I went home and visited my former homeroom teacher. In passing, they mentioned that Ashley had been expelled and was repeating her senior year. I was surprised. "What happened?" The teacher hesitated for a moment before saying, "I heard it was because she stole something from her roommate." It made sense. Ashley had always been vulnerable to temptation. In our previous life, she had likely been expelled for the same reason. But why had Ethan assumed it was my doing back then? He had a habit of blaming me for everything bad that happened to Ashley, as though I were a scapegoat for all her misfortunes. In this life, since I had distanced myself from him early on and wasn't at the National Defense University, he didn't suspect me. A year later, while on a mission with senior colleagues, I ran into Ashley at a nightclub. She was cozied up with a sleazy, second-generation air. In that moment, I realized something. In our past life, Ashley hadn't married the idle heir to make Ethan give up on her. She had married him because she was attracted to his wealth and status. It had been a hasty decision driven by greed, but she had spun it into a story of self-sacrifice for love. She let Ethan believe she had given up everything for him, leaving him racked with guilt for the rest of his life. Later, when she left her husband, she claimed it was because of domestic violence. But the truth was the heir's family had gone bankrupt by then. Ethan, no longer under his parents' thumb, had wealth, connections, and power. Meanwhile, my relationship with him had deteriorated. Ashley saw an opportunity to rekindle their relationship and sought his help under the guise of escaping abuse. Ethan, still harboring unresolved feelings and guilt, couldn't turn her away. They easily fell back into step with each other. Ethan, bound by his moral code as a married man, never crossed the line with Ashley, but she wasn't satisfied. She began sending me provocative photos and videos, intentionally stirring up trouble. She wanted me to fight with Ethan, to target him so he'd feel even more sorry for her and protect her more fiercely. Using those petty, underhanded tricks, she drove a wedge between me and Ethan, eventually taking my place. In our past life, both Ethan and I had been pawns in her schemes, and I had lost to someone like her so miserably. It was unbearable. This grudge couldn't just be left unresolved. The heir was one of our operation's targets. If Ashley's drug test came back positive, it would be over for her. Judging by her indulgent demeanor, it was unlikely she'd come out clean. Through my calculated provocation, Ashley ended up with 3 charges: public disturbance, resisting arrest, and assaulting an officer. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison. During her detention, Ashley repeatedly tried to contact Ethan for help, but Ethan, stuck on campus, couldn't even leave the school gates, let alone rush to Beijing to save her. By the time I reached my 3rd year of college, it was Chinese New Year. At a class reunion, I ran into Ethan again. He was dressed in a military uniform, tall and handsome, exuding righteousness and authority. Among the crowd of meticulously dressed men, Ethan stood out effortlessly, drawing the attention of many women in the room. When they saw me, everyone greeted me warmly, not because they missed me after so many years, but because we had all matured and understood the value of connections. I felt the same way. A strong network was essential for solving cases, and any of my classmates here could become future industry leaders or business moguls. I wasn't afraid of anyone, but I also wouldn't offend anyone lightly. I had prepared myself for Ethan to confront me about Ashley, but instead his first words were, "That dress looks beautiful on you. It suits your style perfectly." I responded with a simple, "Thank you." Whether he praised or criticized me, it no longer had the power to stir my emotions. One of our classmates brought up Ashley's sentencing. "Ethan, didn't you and Ashley both attend the National Defense University? Why did she drop out and end up in Beijing? What happened with her sentencing?" Ethan sipped his wine and replied coolly, "I wasn't very close to her. I don't know much about her situation." Just like that, he brushed off any discussion about Ashley, the woman who had once captivated him completely. How ironic. In my previous life, I had spent 30 years trying to make Ethan forget Ashley, but he never did. Yet in this life, without me doing anything, they had already parted ways. Was it fate, or was it simply human choice? Ethan invited me to visit his home for a few days, but I declined. "My schedule's full. I really don't have time," I said. He looked at me with a hint of sadness. "Is there really no chance for us?" I reminded him calmly. "We're strangers now. After all, you already used our past friendship to plead for Ashley. I told you, we owe each other nothing from now on." Ethan didn't speak to me again after that. Instead, he drank one glass of wine after another. His tolerance was incredible. No group of men could match him. As the night wore on and more women left the gathering, I decided it was time to go as well. Just as I was preparing to leave, Ethan, who had been in the middle of a drinking contest, suddenly stood up. "I'll take you back," he said. Refusing him would have been pointless, so I stayed silent. Ethan escorted me to the hotel entrance, where he finally voiced the question that had been bothering him for a long time. "Why haven't you contacted my mom?" I didn't want to answer, but he pressed on. "My mom hasn't done anything to wrong you, has she? Why did you even delete her from your WeChat?" Since he insisted on knowing, I decided not to hold back. There was no need to protect Aunt Linda anymore. If anything, letting him know the truth might help him move on sooner. "Because the two men who assaulted me were acting on her orders," I said quietly. "She was at the bar that night." Ethan stumbled back a step, nearly falling. "That's impossible. She would never do that to you." I smirked bitterly. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" He shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. "No, it has to be a misunderstanding. My mom treated you like her own daughter. She couldn't possibly have orchestrated something like that." I countered, "If she didn't have anything to hide, why hasn't she contacted me in 3 years? You believed Ashley every time she accused me of orchestrating that incident to separate you two, didn't you? So why can't you believe that your mom might have orchestrated something too?" Ethan avoided my gaze, guilt written all over his face. He was clearly beginning to doubt himself. Deep down, he must have suspected it all along. Back then, he had chosen to believe Ashley's slander over me, the person he had grown up with. And now, faced with the truth, he didn't know what to believe anymore. He didn't believe in my character, nor did he trust me. Whatever lingering feelings I had for Ethan disappeared entirely. "Leave," I said coldly. "I don't want to see you again." I left and immediately called Vivi, booking an impromptu trip to clear my head. Ethan tried to contact me, switching between 3 different phone numbers, but I blocked every one of them. After graduating college, Vivi and I both started working at the provincial department. On our first day, we were handed a stack of matchmaking profiles. Amusingly, Vivi and I received nearly identical sets. When I went to my uncle's house for dinner, I found yet another stack, this one personally curated by my aunt. "These are all handpicked based on your preferences," she said confidently. "They're all clean with no skeletons in their closets. You could pick one with your eyes closed." I wasn't interested, so I handed the profiles to Vivi. 3 months later, Vivi had a flash wedding. She chose my aunt's nephew, officially making her part of the family. 3 years later, Ethan walked into my office. "I heard you're still single. Would you consider giving me a chance?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "Do you think that's possible?" I replied coolly. Ethan smiled bitterly. "I knew you'd say that. It's okay. I'll wait until you're no longer angry with me. I've already applied for a transfer and I'll be relocated here in 3 months. I'm also planning to buy a house nearby. Do you have any recommendations for good neighborhoods?" "I don't," I said curtly. "I'm very busy. Take care." After Ethan left, I submitted a transfer request to my superiors. By the time Ethan bought a house and came looking for me again, I was already gone. When I turned 30, Ethan found me once more. "May," he said, "I know you haven't gotten married. Can't you at least consider giving me a chance?" "I haven't dated anyone these past years," I answered matter-of-factly. "I've been waiting for you." But that wasn't the truth I lived by. Every time I ran into old high school classmates, they inevitably caught up and praised Ethan's success and intelligence while lamenting that he hadn't found the right person. I never waited for Ethan. My singlehood wasn't because I lacked options. I simply didn't believe in marriage or having children. "I have a boyfriend," I said flatly. Ethan froze for a moment, then chuckled. "May, stop joking. I know you're a very traditional woman. If you were truly in love with someone, you wouldn't have stayed single this long." Just then, a tall, handsome man with a toned physique walked out of my bedroom, wearing nothing but a bathrobe. "Babe, who's this? A colleague or a new neighbor?" he asked casually. Ethan's gaze dropped to the faint red marks on the man's chest. Disbelief plain on his face, he stepped back. I shrugged. "Want to come in for a cup of tea?" Ethan turned and left in a panic. I closed the door and was about to go back to bed when the man pushed me against the door. "Was that your ex-boyfriend? Did he come back to get together with you?" he teased. I smacked Wei Chan on the forehead. "You'd better behave yourself, or I won't hesitate to kick you out, even if it embarrasses your sister. Let's be clear, you're my boyfriend in name only. In harsher terms, you're just a fling. Don't interfere in my personal matters." Wei Chan instantly dropped his dominant facade and turned into a meek puppy as he circled me. "I was wrong, sis. Forgive me. I'll behave. I'll fulfill my role as your boyfriend properly. Next time he comes around, I'll act like the bigger man and make sure you don't lose face." After sending Wei Chan away, I immediately called Vivi to scold her. "Did you give Ethan my address? What were you thinking? Do you want to see him and your brother fight? If you're trying to mess with your brother, tell me directly. There's no need to involve outsiders." On the other end, the loud clinking of her spoon as she stirred coffee sounded like someone scrambling for food. I just felt bad for him, searching for you everywhere and finding nothing. It was bad timing. Did he interrupt your sleep? I snorted coldly. "If you pity men, you'll be unlucky for life." Vivi sighed dramatically. "My poor little brother. If I'd known you had a heart of stone, I never would have introduced him to you. If you like, you can still accept someone softer, but it's too late now. He just called asking how he can beat his rival without a title. He's practically proposing with all his indirect moves. But as long as I don't play along, no one can force you into marriage." "Marriage is just a formality," I said. "If two people can stay together forever, does a piece of paper really matter? And if feelings fade, even a marriage certificate won't save the relationship. Isn't freedom living as you please better?" Ethan's perspective, I thought I had all the time in the world to win May back. I thought she just needed time to forgive me. I waited patiently, believing she'd eventually forget the unpleasant past. But then I saw him, the man in a bathrobe in her house, and it hit me. She had already fallen for someone else. The girl I had protected for 18 years had been taken away by another man. At that moment, all I wanted was to destroy him. But I couldn't. I had already upset May, and resorting to violence in front of her would only push her further away. Desperate, I turned to her father, Uncle Pan, for help. He'd always liked me, and I thought if he spoke to her on my behalf, I'd still have a chance. But Uncle Pan sighed. "I haven't been able to reach her for a year. Do you think I can still influence her?" How could that be? He was her father. That's when it came back to me. Uncle Pan was rarely home. His relationship with May had always been distant. Even when her mother passed, he stayed only a week before leaving again. He didn't even return for her 18th birthday. He had never fulfilled his duties as a father during the 3 most difficult years of her life. It had been just my mom and me by her side, and yet we both betrayed her. The most pitiful person wasn't Ashley with her modest upbringing. It was May, who seemed strong but was always lonely. She had the backing of several powerful figures, yet none of them were truly there for her. My mother's kindness toward her had been calculated. My protection had always been reserved and served for someone else. She lived alone in this world without anyone who genuinely loved or cared for her. So now she no longer loves either of us. What had I done? Why had I treated her that way? Why had I thought she didn't need me, that she was invincible? Why couldn't I see her helplessness and pain? Now she had finally let go of me and even her father. This is the punishment we deserve. Ashley's return. Ashley came to me again asking for reconciliation. How could a woman who'd been with several men and spent time in prison think she was worthy of my attention? If she hadn't constantly played the victim and begged for sympathy in front of me, May would never have left me. I hated Ashley so much that I wanted to send her back to prison. But when I thought of my mom, I agreed to bring her home to meet her. If you can convince my mom to accept you as her daughter-in-law, I'll marry you, I told Ashley. As I expected, my mother and Ashley tortured each other for months. The more time they spent together, the more they despised each other. Eventually, their constant conflicts escalated into a full-blown fight that landed both of them in the hospital. My mom threatened me, saying that if I dared to marry Ashley, she would jump off a building and end her life. In the end, I didn't marry Ashley, not because of my mom's threats, but because the daughter of a commander, Yao Qinlin, decided she wanted me for herself. She was relentless and insisted she wouldn't marry anyone else. The commander, doting on his precious daughter, personally came to ask my opinion. What could I say? A spoiled, headstrong woman like her was perfect for keeping my mom occupied. Naturally, I agreed to the marriage. On our wedding day, my mom, playing the role of a traditional mother-in-law, demanded that Yao Qinlin kneel and serve her tea as part of the ceremony. Yao Qinlin, who had been pampered and cherished all her life, had never bowed down to anyone. Instead of complying, she raised the teacup and splashed its contents right onto my mom's face. My mom retaliated by raising her hand to slap her, but Yao Qinlin grabbed her wrist and the two began wrestling in front of the guests. The onlookers stifled laughter while the commander and my father sat red-faced, unsure of what to do. Both turned to me for help. I sided with no one. This daughter-in-law was the kind of woman my mom had always wanted, wealthy, well-connected, and beneficial to my future. She had no reason to complain. Yao Qinlin had fought tooth and nail to marry into our family, threatening the commander countless times. She had no excuse not to accept my mom as her mother-in-law, so I poured all my energy into my work, leaving my mom and my wife to their endless quarrels. On good days, I'd visit home to spend time with the kids. On bad days, I stayed at the workplace. Yao Qinlin often praised me, saying I was nothing like other men who sided with their mothers to bully their wives. Yao Qinlin often called me the perfect husband, capable, ambitious, and loyal. Marrying you, she would say proudly, was the best decision I ever made. I used to wonder, are women really so easily satisfied? Was May ever like that? My mother, however, wasn't pleased. She constantly complained that I let my wife bully her. One evening, tired of her endless grievances, I asked bluntly, "Do you really want Ashley as your daughter-in-law? Or would you rather have Yao Qinlin?" Without hesitation, my mother snapped, "I want May as my daughter-in-law." That broke me. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of the house and walked aimlessly through the rain, tears mixing with the downpour as they rolled down my face. I wanted May too, but it was too late. The woman who once vowed she would never marry had already tied the knot with that man in the bathrobe. She was no longer the little girl who used to follow me everywhere, no longer the sweet voice that called my mother Aunt Linda. Now she belonged to someone else. I buried myself in work and busied myself with setting up my new home, but the emptiness lingered. Ashley still hovered around, trying every trick to weasel her way back into my life. The future is long, I told myself, but I'll never again call her May. That name belongs to a past I destroyed with my own hands. If my mother hadn't orchestrated that night at the bar, maybe things would have been different. Maybe May and I could have had the happy family I once imagined. It's all my fault. Why did I treat Ashley so well, so publicly, that everyone believed I was in love with her? Why couldn't I understand my own heart sooner? Why didn't I see May's worth before it was too late? If time could turn back, I'd give up everything. My career, my pride, my future, just to have her back.